Welcome to SwarmCast, the marketing hive for pest control pros from coast to coast. If you're tired of your competition bugging you and want to grow your business like a well-built colony, you're in the right place. Each episode, we'll break down the latest marketing trends, expert insights, and proven strategies to help you exterminate the competition and keep your phones buzzing. So strap in, pest bosses. It's time to swarm the market and take your business to the next level. This is SwarmCast.
Welcome to the Swarm podcast. We have Gabe Seymour, owner of Pest Patrol, coming to you straight from Portland. Also, he's up in Washington. He's also the co-host of Coast to Coast podcast himself. He is a Swarm mastermind member, our first one, and we get to have him on the show today to talk about what's going on with risk going into business for yourself. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things. Fun show today. Can't wait to have you listen to all the nuggets of wisdom that's going to come from this podcast. Gabe's on the show. He was the first one that caught my eye when I had the vision to create this podcast, this peer group. I wanted to find players in the field that were doing it, that were making it happen. And I came across Gabe's content, and here we are. It's only been a couple of months, and now Gabe, our first OG mastermind member, is going to talk about several things that are important to him. But for those thinking about getting into pest control, or those that maybe have started, or even those that are rolling with it, Gabe's got some awesome things to share. So no further ado, I'm going to have Gabe talk about pest control and his journey. And I'm going to hand over the microphone to Gabe. Go ahead, Gabe.
Great. Yeah. Well, first shout out to the Swarm Mastermind. The first group we did was really, really great, and looking forward to doing more of those. So, maybe should I give just a brief background of the company?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I want to hear it. We want to hear it all.
Yeah. So, Pest Patrol is a Portland area pest control company. We're really focused on residential, largely rodent work, rodent restoration stuff. So we do all the crawl space, attic space side of things now as well. And we're coming up on 5 years old. So we're about 4.5, still baby company right now. And our goal is to break 1 million this year for the first time, which will be really, really cool. And yeah, I'm big on legacy, trying to build long-term vision, long-term culture, engaging businesses, and yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. I look at a lot of your social media content, and when I see that you have your son in the cab, or you guys just did a big breakfast somewhere with all your decked out trucks. The first part of that business, I know you said 5 years, but that's a long time, okay, in entrepreneur land. And what did it feel like to take everybody out to breakfast? All your trucks are out there in the parking lot. What's the excitement and the energy level when you're doing this? It's like, hey, I got here. What's going on in your mind there?
Yeah, it's funny because I think you and I have talked about this before, Wyatt, but you're constantly well, at least I'm constantly dealing with imposter syndrome, right? Where it's like no matter each tier of success, each tier of the scaling the business, I'm always like, oh, there's no way I'm actually, doing this. I'm just waiting for everything to unravel, right? So that's kind of a constant in the back of my mind, just personally, but it's really cool. It's surreal. I can recall multiple points along the journey so far in the last 4 years where you just you take a step back and you're like, wow, it's chaotic and crazy, but like we're actually doing it. Yeah, so we just bought our 5th truck. So yeah, when we go, and there's probably 18 parking spots at this little cafe. And so my goal is to just have all 18 full of Pest Patrol, trucks down the line.
You're going to do, first of all, I know you're going to get there. We're going to have a party when you hit the $1 million marker, by the way.
Yes.
I'm in it to win it with you, the mastermind. Everybody's behind it. We want to see the journey though, because that's the fun part. Not
Yeah.
because you hit this number. I was on a stage last year with one of Tony Robbins' people, and we were talking about imposter syndrome. And I needed to have somebody get up there and say, "Hey, Wyatt, you're good enough." You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
it sounds weird to say that, but this guy that goes with Tony Robbins, these big functions, and it was not a Tony Robbins function. I just want to make sure I put that out there. This guy has one arm,
Mm.
and he's an amazing speaker. His name's Nick, and I'm not going to say the last name right, but his name's Nick. And just to have him say that in front of a group, saying, "Hey, you're good enough," and then help me deal with that imposter syndrome. First of all, you're not alone. I've dealt with that. Other CEOs deal with that. Other business owners deal with that. So I think it's great that, hey, you're getting past that. You got the whole parking lot. It's going to be filled up here before you know it. It feels good when you see your trucks. Your trucks look good, man. You did a good job. Whoever you hired to do your branding, your brand caught me right out of the gate. It's making notes in the community. Now, one of the goals that we set up 3 months ago was 200 reviews. And I read your reviews, by the way. I read what people are saying about your brand. Why do I do that? Because I care about your brand. And I would be the first one to tell you, hey, you got to look into this. We have to watch our reputation, and you have an impeccable one. Not easy to do, but I will tell you, your reputation is amazing out there in Portland, Washington, and people love you guys.
Yeah.
What is it that you're doing different? Give some folks some tips. What are you doing different?
Um, oh man. So this is gonna maybe be a little non-conventional here, and that my true pest control buddies might hate this, but I don't actually think that we provide the best pest control in my area. In terms of the actual, like, I'm sure there's just a lot of people that have way more technical experience, way more knowledge of entomology. All things considered, I'm coming in as fairly new, particularly when I launched the company, was coming in with, very little experience. But our ace in the hole is that we just genuinely care a tremendous amount about our customers, and we're willing to bend over backwards and problem solve and be honest and transparent with them. And so I think we just end up winning. Our team wins on the character front, on the integrity front, and on the like customer experience front, because I think they're all really engaged and all in on truly serving the customer.
I love that you said that because that's the piece that your competition or other people don't have is they don't have Gabe. They don't have what you represent. And I'll just say that you end up with unique selling propositions that are a part of your brand, right? So you care about the customer. You go way beyond. I've seen the pictures, some of the things that you've done, even educating the client. And selling is about earning trust,
Yeah.
and that does not happen with a sleek brand or a lot of things that people think would earn you the business.
Yeah.
Is it getting easier for you? I'm curious. Is it getting easier for you while you're out there?
Yeah, yeah, it certainly is. And I feel like, the further in you go, it's like you're building up knowledge. You really are building up that like brand trust, like you said, I don't know, brand awareness. And so yeah, I feel like, and just I think the more we've been in business, things like I launched a couple years ago with Andy Sinevsky in New York. Like we run a podcast. So that's been like that podcast has teeny listeners, right? But it's really helped us for my business clarify what I'm about. So it's helped me just talk through issues. That's all we do. We just get on there and we just talk through culture issues and team issues and leadership issues and vision, like branding kind of core values, was one of our recent ones. And so it's just been really helpful. I think the more that I've found out, oh, this is the core of who we are as a brand, yeah, it makes selling and servicing and leading so much easier.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you're in the pest control business, there's certain issues you're going to have right off the bat. And I think one of the posts I remember seeing that you wrote out there was about how do you hire somebody, a new team member, because you could make a big mistake really quick. I know I have.
Yep.
We had one of our first pest control techs
Yep.
selling our tools. So imagine having to let somebody go and then go collect your tools from the pawn shop. Not only did that hurt your brand, you hope you didn't do something out in the field, but it's sad. It's
Yeah.
sad. So, but here when we have a podcast, a peer group, someone to talk to that we're sharing these issues with, and then we learn from those mistakes. Now you have a full process about how you onboard. The last
Yeah.
person you hired for, how many people did you interview? It was a large number, I believe. How many people did you
Yeah.
interview for that position? Yeah.
Yeah. So the last full-time tech, um, yeah, I mean, for me, I probably interviewed uh 30 or 40 people, which at least on my side is like an astronomical number, particularly compared to previous, previous hires before that. And I think maybe more important than how many people I interviewed is I had a set of really good interview questions. I have like operating procedures of the whole onboarding process and stuff, but I didn't start out with any of that, unfortunately.
And that's part of learning, right? That's part of that learning process. Now, you talk about a consultant. I think you said his name's Paul. Is that his name that he helped with you?
So last year I was with Pete
Okay.
Chopin. You remember? Yeah.
Pete. Yes. Yeah,
Yep.
Pete. Okay. And did you get some of that direction from him?
Yeah, he definitely was big on yeah, SOPs, getting procedure stuff in place. And then he helped me a lot with my pricing structure because I really wasn't charging enough, which is all too common, you know. And so he really helped be like, yeah, you need to charge what you're worth.
Excellent. And I know in the last couple of months you had your biggest month.
Yeah,
Was
yeah,
that December?
December. Yeah, December
December.
December we had our biggest month ever.
Okay. Now, typically in the pest control world, December is not a big month. So
No.
what did you do different? What happened in December?
Um, Man, well, I think it's a whole combination of things. The pricing increase has helped, having our pricing structured better. Uh, our volumes are just higher because I have more technicians available this December. We had double the team size this December versus last December. Um, so last December I had two techs. And then this December, I had five techs. And so we could just say yes to everything, which was awesome. And then we had dialed in our lead flow a lot better. You had helped me with some of the Google My Business stuff. So that started pulling a lot. We had the guy writing our blogs for us, and that's been helpful with web traffic. So just, I think, a whole combination of things. But one big thing that I've realized is just, like I mentioned, having the capacity with team size to be able to say yes to opportunities quickly has been a game changer.
It's awesome. So team size, putting in the right players, going through, putting the work in to get the right team in place that aligns with your core values, your mission, your brand, everything that you do. Now, I know that you have your professional life and you have like a huge family. I take note, and I really like those when you're going, "Hey, I'm taking my wife out. We're doing this," and then I see your kids and those. That's a beautiful thing. A lot of business owners miss this in their social.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that say to your area when they're looking for a pest control company? And it's a very trusted piece to have somebody come in and do pest control in their homes.
Yes.
How is it that you started mixing that in? I mean, you've always been a really good family man, or is this something that's part of your marketing strategy? What happened here?
Certainly part of my branding strategy just as a human, absolutely I mean, my family is my reputation. They're my legacy. When I'm gone, everything about who I am and what I was about is uh, pushed through them. So yeah, that's huge for me. And we're going to talk, some hopefully today about risk taking and that type of thing. One of the biggest drivers for me for being willing to step out, put my neck out there and continue pushing and taking risks is that I've got a family, not only an amazing like wife that's supportive and awesome, but also like I got a lot of mouths to feed, right? Like
Yes, you
literally,
do.
I got three girls, so I'm thinking, weddings. I'm like, okay, get ready to have a lot of tens of thousands of dollars stuck away to pay for their weddings, right? I'm like, there's a very natural, organic pressure, which I think has been really helpful. And in terms of, I think what it communicates to the community at large, um, I think it's very practically that a family is a lot of responsibility. And if you're able to successfully shepherd a family, it adds credibility to who you are as a person, you know? So it's like, yeah, you can come in and deal with my aunts. I know you're not gonna, steal stuff from my cupboards, right? You're gonna be generally trustworthy because you've got six kids. Like, you're not gonna go ruin it on whatever.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I think it's brilliant. I know it's you when I read your posts, and I got to tell you, one of the things that I really like about your content is the reality of setbacks. And hey, I had this issue, I had that issue. It's transparency,
Yeah,
and a lot of people can't connect those dots. Where by somehow being transparent, humble, hungry, smart, right? That's what I look for in players that I surround myself with is that transparency because I know that hey, this guy's not trying to project Mr. Perfection,
yeah.
you know. And so the question that we'll round back around to the risk taking piece, right? If you were to talk to your younger self
Mm.
and hey, everybody does it. We look back and say, hey, I could have done it better. What would you tell little Gabe about risk taking and about entrepreneur getting into business?
Mm.
Hard question. I know it's not an easy one.
Um, yeah, I would have, and I encourage all the young guys that are in my network, the same thing. I would have jumped into even just from like maybe a side hustle side of things. I would have jumped into business earlier, and I'm thinking like 15, 16 kind of thing, like still in high school. Um, because it was so not, I grew up just classic kid, going to the public school. I got my education. I was going to go through college. I was planning on doing music, which is like not, it's like the opposite of, entrepreneurship. I was going to go play in an orchestra somewhere. And and it just wasn't even on my mind. Nobody had really shown me the world of business until I was like in my early 20s. I ended up dropping out of college. But yeah, until I was in my early 20s. But like I hadn't been exposed to it at all before then. So I would have encouraged myself, hey, just look into that earlier.
So I hear a mentor forming for your girls to help them along that path, right? To kind of figure out how can we train and teach and help others, even employees that we have, right?
Yeah,
The way I think about any pest tax or anybody that's working in any of the companies that I own, I'm thinking about how can I help them on their journey?
yeah,
They're not going to be on that bus with me forever. And I let that be known to them
yeah,
that I want them to up level. And, I can say right now that there's 7 people that have come to this agency, the digital marketing agency. They now own their own agencies.
yeah,
And, the abundance mindset is that's awesome. They can feed their own families. They helped build this one, but now they're able to do what we taught them to do. Not that we're perfect at it. Like you said, hey, we're not. There's always somebody better, by the way. There's always somebody better. But the
yep,
only difference is they don't have Gabe, they don't have Wyatt, and we're bringing authenticity and love to the planet. We care about people that we serve. We don't want to take their money unless we're going to help them
yep,
protect their homes or help them build their businesses.
Yeah.
and there's a lot of feel good in that. You go home and you sleep well at night.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, I've got one of my technicians he works with me on the technical side. His girlfriend is one of our office gals. And I've had multiple conversations with them. I'm like, "Hey, like listen, you guys are creating a power duo here. Like you guys, you're learning the technical and the back end side of things. You could launch your own business." And so I've given them, over and over again, like encouragements. Hey, when that time comes, just let me know when you're ready to pull the trigger. Like I'll help you out however I can. And yeah, that's my vision. I'm like, if I could have 20 small businesses here in Portland that used to be technicians, that I would make me the happiest person in the world.
absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people don't get the advantages of maybe, going to college. Maybe they didn't have that opportunity, or maybe they started a family early. Uh, how can they make it happen? When I thought about pest control before got into this business myself, I own part owner in multiple pest control companies. I had a thought about pest control.
Hmm.
And then when I sat down and looked at somebody talking to me about the business model, it made sense to me. I'm like, wow, what a great profession. How many professions can you be in, make this huge difference and enjoy your work? You can be outside, you can work you can work in the office, you can be out in the field. You're solving one problem after another. I think it's a great, a lot of people will look down on service people, but I will tell you the pest control marketing or the pest control market is very special. I
Yeah.
learned that at Pest World this year. I went to Pest World, I'm sorry, in 2024, last year. We're going to go this year. And there are some amazing people.
Yeah.
And these podcasts, we're going to have some awesome folks on here as the year continues. But I am so glad that we get to talk to you first because this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this. I'm like, hey, Gabe is the man, the OG that got this mastermind kicked off, and we had a lot of fun getting it kicked off. So, as far as helping Pest Patrol, we know what your goals are. We know where you're going with it. You've got this huge community behind you already. I would love to hear some of the challenges that you had in the first 2 years because that's usually the hardest part. Most businesses crash and burn those first 2 years.
Right.
Maybe there's some awesome gems you can provide to, I would say, year one, year two, a crossover from being a good technician to owning a business. What did you learn in those
Yeah.
2 years?
Yeah, man. Well, first I'd say I do deep dives on most all of the stuff I'm about to say on my LinkedIn page. So like I've got lots of content on all of this. If anybody wants to, dig more into those. But some of the big kind of oops moments, I lost a lot of money my first couple years in terms of just stupid mistakes that I'm I wish I didn't have to make them to learn, but I don't know if I certainly wouldn't be the businessman that I am right now without, learning those. Um, but a couple of like just difficulties in those first couple years. One of them is financing for vehicles. So like when you go from, a normal, a W-2 job, it's really quite easy to get financing on things if you need to, as long as you make a decent amount. Yeah, so you could walk into any dealership and just get financed for $100,000 truck and nobody would bat an eye, right? Um, the moment you go self-employed, and particularly for me, it was in an industry that I hadn't, I went from automotive oil changes into pest control, so it was an industry switch as well, and like no financiers, uh, no dealerships would touch me with a 10-foot pole to finance any of my vehicles, right? So I had my first vehicle I financed before I launched the business when I still had a salary, and then which was a good idea, and I always recommend if people are planning to make that jump, finance a truck first or whatever, get it beforehand. And then, but my first two vehicles after that. over that next couple years, I paid cash for, which was brutal because you don't have any cash when you're starting up.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
No, that's good stuff. So finance a vehicle before you leave your job. That's
yeah,
smart.
yeah.
Okay, so how do you get financing after? I mean, will banks touch you in the first 2 years or not?
No, at least for me, it took 3 years of being in the business, and then finally they would start allowing me to get financing. Um, and but everything was sort of it was like you can finance it, but you co-sign on it, right? Personally, which is that's probably pretty normal. And then this most recent one, we just bought another truck, and we're 4.5 years in now. And this was the first time they were like cool with. Now I have enough history that they'd finance it. I'm not a co-signer on it, and it's just kind of carried by the business. And I don't know how much of that is like. Uh, just specific to my experience in this, but yeah, it was brutal, for me. I felt like it was like you have the plague and nobody will come near you, right? You're searching everywhere.
I appreciate that story because anybody that's going to go into business sounds like they need to save for a while.
Yeah,
Save for a while, right?
yeah,
And don't expect anybody to bail you out,
yes,
especially the banks. The banks are going to bail you out. I learned that as well, where it was do or die, and no one's going to loan you money until you get past at least 2 years
yep,
and you have good financials. And
yeah,
most businesses don't even turn a profit in the first 2 years.
yep,
Probably not an option for you or me. And obviously, we had to make money month one. And in pest control, it's all about what your fleet, your trucks, how many techs you have, or else you're just an owner operator. And a lot of people will stay in the owner operator. They won't grow past that. So tell us, what did you do to get past being just the owner operator? What did you do? What was the next step?
Okay, so a big principle that just hit me in the face over and over again for the first few years, it was this repeated phrase, you got to scale through, scale through. And I would keep coming up with issues because, like, when I launched the business, I had 4 kids, 4 little kids, right? And so, like, I'm already pulling a substantial amount of money from the business, right? I had come from a really good salaried position. So, like, I mean, we had a house, and so I'm like a huge drain on the business, right? Financially, personally. And um, I knew if if I was going to do an owner operator thing, that would be fine if I wanted to just work out in the field all the time. But if I wanted to do anything else, that I had to scale fast. Um, because otherwise we were gonna go under because I was too high of a financial burden on the company, um, early on. So I hired my first tech after 4 months, being out in the field before I even had. I mean, I didn't have enough work for 2 people. I had enough work for one person, but yeah, I hired him like right away. So I started August of 2020, and first technician was hired January 1st of 2021. Um, and he's still with
Wow.
me actually, which is cool. But yeah, I just knew intrinsically, um, it was like sink or swim. If I don't start hiring and continue scaling, we're stagnating and we're gonna die. So, I mean,
Oh,
that sounds pretty
it's
brutal, but that's literally what was going
it's
through my
not.
mind.
It,
Yeah,
it's not. I think it's part of that risk discussion
yeah,
that a lot of people they're in love with the idea of going into business, but they don't get that, hey, what happens when you're sick and you don't have a team member? I'm sure Gabe was out in the field when he was sick
yep,
because his daughters need to be fed.
yep.
How many times you got to get up and go no matter what? You don't get that call in sick day anymore. Um, the risk to hire somebody, was that scary when you hired that first tech and there wasn't enough money on the table?
Yeah. Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was totally brutal. And same thing. I mean, as a company, we didn't make a profit. We didn't make a profit until last year. Last year was our first year making a true, like, where we like, oh, hey, we had like we could have done disbursements. We didn't. Put through everything in the company savings, but it was the first year we could have, which is nuts. And but yeah, it's like it's absolutely brutal those first hires, because you don't have the money. And what's really hard to calculate is all the opportunity cost of not hiring somebody, right? Uh, it's so easy. You just look at labor and it's like hourly rate and all this stuff. But yeah, I had, right before that, I had been a part of a 60-person team, uh, doing oil changes across like six different centers. And so like I had seen the big side, not big, but bigger side, a company that had scaled, far past owner operator. And so I just knew intrinsically, uh, scale or die.
I'm not sure what you did for fun when you were a kid, but I did like BMX, okay? And there was a jump called a double. That's the do or die.
Yeah.
And you either commit and you jump that thing or your front tire goes into it and you die.
Yes.
If you kind of like chicken out. Or you just pedal to the metal, and usually what happens is you overshoot it. Now that's even harder sometimes to recover because you were so amped up, you overshot it.
Yep.
So, this year you've had some training and you're there. You got your goals in place. You've got mentorship. You've got five trucks. You got a team. And now you're going to land that thing and it's going to be smooth. But a lot of people that are watching, maybe family, maybe um, some competitors, they're watching and they're seeing what you're doing. And you're setting examples what you're doing in the community. Hey, outside of, hey, we got competition, we got a business and we're employing families now. I have a responsibility towards them now. It goes beyond my own family.
Yeah. Right.
You know, how many people are you impacting now? Like you got five, or how many people you got working with you right now?
So we've got five techs and two office personnel. So yeah, seven individuals, and then myself.
Yeah. And then you have their families,
Yeah.
so you're impacting a lot of people just by getting out there and starting a business, which is a beautiful thing. Now
Yeah.
that your business, Pest Patrol, is only going to grow as much as you grow, Gabe.
Hmm.
Have you ever thought about it that way?
No, I haven't. I like it.
Yeah. So I love the risk subject because at some point you said, do or die. I'm going to do this because my family's depending on me. I got to that point 17 years ago, and I had worked for corporate America, $28 billion a year company called UPS. And I just got to the point where, you know what? I don't want somebody else to determine my future. I want to determine my own.
Yeah.
I want to call that. And that's a beautiful thing. Why not? And then when it fails or wins, I got one person to blame. It's myself.
Yep.
And I think that that's the risk you take when you do this stuff. And so you took that risk. Now tell us about some of the sacrifices that you had to make that most people won't. What sacrifices did you make?
Well, I don't know if these are, ones most people won't, but certainly sacrifices that were terrifying. Uh, I recall my second year in business. It was um, it was November, and we actually had a decent November, all things considered, that year. Um, and but I had overstaffed. Um, I think I had maybe hired a third technician at that point, um, out in the field, and I ran payroll, and I had like $78 left in my checking account after I ran payroll, and I was like, okay, I better start making some calls and collecting for next payroll. But it was, it's like that type of literally down to the wire stuff. Um, I thankfully have not had to like I've never had to like take out a line of credit to pay my payroll yet. But I've definitely heard of, I remember my brother-in-law, he launched a brand in Idaho, and he said early on he put payroll on his credit card once just because he couldn't, he didn't have the cash flow, and and he ended up scaling an awesome company. But it's crazy. I mean, sometimes it's literally that down to the wire. Um, we didn't we didn't take a salary from the company for the first 2 years, so we lived off of our savings. So when you said, "Hey, put a lot away," that's what we had done. I mean, we had we had like 150K that we had just stuck away, and we ended up using up most, if not just about all of that, just to survive for a couple years, um, while I scaled. But yeah, we weren't taking anything from the company. Um, and then sometimes, you'd have a bad month and the company would literally go negative and you're forking out that cash. We had in 2023, we had our November of 2023 went totally haywire, and I ended up losing $10,000 just paying out 10 grand. Um, so it's like, I mean, those are the realities of running a small business. But yeah, and nobody sees those, right? Like you kind of just bear those and work through them. But yeah, they're real, and I know I'm not alone in most all of that stuff.
You're not alone. And I will tell you, I didn't have that luxury. I didn't have any savings when I went into business at all.
Wow, well done.
I had my partner's credit card, and I can't make this joke up, man. And it was do or die, and it was go sell something and make the work happen.
Yep,
And there were two of us, and so we had to carry 10 grand a month. That's what we had to do.
yep,
uh, I have never not paid myself.
well done.
It took me over a decade to get a line of credit,
Yep,
uh to and then I didn't need it. And so basically
yeah,
what
right.
happens, so you guys know, banks will give you money when you don't need it. But I'm here to tell you, and then I learned this later, is make sure you have those lines of credit. So when the junk does hit the fan, you have something to tap.
Yeah,
Now, this happened during COVID. A lot of people tried to get stuff, and their banks, because they didn't have relationships with banks, they were bad, bad. I'm talking about bigger businesses. So a tip for this call is if you are in business and you only have one bank, make sure you have two or three. Don't just have one. Here's a
yeah,
nice little tip. Yeah, and
that's huge.
I've seen people tank because of it. And
Yeah,
it's good to have with a local bank, and maybe two of the bigger ones like a Chase or a Wells Fargo or whoever you got a decent relationship with. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's a great point. Yeah, it's funny you hear it a lot in like rap songs, right? Artists are coming up and they say, where were you when I wasn't making any money, right? You're not one of my day ones, right? You hear that type of, well, that's a real common narrative. Like it's common in the music industry, it's common in small business where it's like when you need people to stand by you at the most is right at the beginning. But again, oftentimes nobody's going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. And then when you've scaled and you're cash flowing a bunch of money and you don't need it, everybody's like, "Hey, come in," and they're wanting you to be part of their vendor program and part of it's just such a funny phenomena.
it happens over and over again. It's the non-risk taker. It's the people that are just along for the ride. They don't want to take the risk. They're not going to put forth the effort.
Hmm.
They become your best friend when you have cash flow. But when we think about like this is one thing. There's a real conversation I had with one of my other businesses. I have a partner, and I'm a minority partner. I own 30% in this other company. And he's like, "Hey, I need to make more money." I'm like, "Well, you're the majority shareholder. So if you want to make more money, there's really two things you got to do." What are the two things? Let's see if you get them right. What are the two things? If you want to make more money as a business owner, what do you got to do?
You're asking me?
Yeah. You want to
Uh,
make more money? What do you got to do?
increase your volumes, cut your cost.
That's it. And that's exactly what I told him. Make more money or go cut some expenses.
Yeah.
And I said, but don't forget one thing. And this is something that business owners forget is their business is actually worth something. So outside of that salary you're paying yourself, as you're building Pest Patrol, if you want to go sell that thing, there's a big check there.
Right.
And when you hit $1 million, I can tell you what it is.
Right.
As long as somebody looks at your books and they see that a majority of it is reoccurring, maybe you have a break on type. Now in our mastermind group, we'll go through all that stuff with M&A. But don't forget what the value of that business is worth in proximity to the salary that you're making.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and a
right.
lot of younger business owners don't know that their business is worth something because to start that new brand and you experience it, I experienced it. The first 2 years, no one knows who you are. You're showing up with Pest Patrol, and they're like, "I've never heard of these guys." There's no Google reviews.
Yeah.
There's nothing but a truck out front, and he had a magnet on it. For all I know,
Yep.
maybe you had a magnet. Maybe you have a wrap. I don't know, but somebody has to take a risk on you at some point, and that's the scary part. Is this is going to sound funny, but I used to say it, and my partner corrected me. He goes, "Wyatt, we're not in our infancy anymore. We've been at it for a
Yeah.
couple of
Right.
years."
Yeah.
But in your mind, you're like, "That's funny." My this is auto gesturing. Sorry about that. Um, didn't know Zoom upgraded their software. Um, yeah, yeah, that would hit to remind me that you have to stop thinking that you're in your infancy.
Yeah.
A majority of businesses won't make it past 2 years. A majority of businesses, even beyond that million in revenue. And so you're building something beautiful there that the community is benefiting from, not only your family, but the other seven working there and their families,
Yes.
you know. And then obviously, let's talk a little bit about community. I know we have 15 minutes here to talk a little bit more about Pest Patrol. What are you doing in the community? Because a lot of small businesses won't do anything in the community. Tell me what you're doing in the community.
Um, I'm probably amongst the worst examples of engaging in the community, to be honest. But
Okay, okay.
uh I mean, so we do um we're quite involved. So like we've got our whole kind of church community. So we're really involved with that. That's not explicitly like the Pest Patrol brand, but we end up helping with and sponsoring stuff through that. Um, but I've done kind of networking groups, kind of like Chamber of Commerce-ish kind of stuff in the past. And I'm not currently doing that. That's on the radar for I really want to have a like a salesperson who kind of owns that and is just able to do like community development relationship side of things. But yeah, I would say generally like I'm pretty bad at that. Just I mean, being totally honest. Um, but yeah,
Well, I think what's nice about you talking about it in that way is, hey, it's room for growth, right? And possibly even getting out of your comfort zone. I know
yeah,
in the first couple of years, you're just trying to make payroll. You had 78 bucks in the account. But as you're growing, you're impacting businesses in the community, you're impacting employees, you're impacting the church in the community. What else can you do? I'll just tell you one of the things that I did that I think's easy enough is go pick your nonprofit in the area that you and your core employees that can get behind it. Like they're going to show up. And I'll just give you one example. Last year, there was a church and they packed lunches for people that don't have food, and they were doing hundreds of thousands of meals, like putting them together. And so they didn't cost anything. All they had to do is have their team show up and pack lunches. That was their gift to the community. Not all the time does it has to be a cash outlay from the
yeah,
business,
right,
but that was involved with the church and that was involved with something giving back to even beyond their community. And
yeah,
I thought that was beautiful. So there's plenty of causes. But there are things that, when you're involved like you are in the church there, that your your employees see that. And we know there's more happiness in giving than receiving, and that becomes part of the brand too.
Yeah.
Um, the first event that I did, this is going to sound fun, is I rented a movie theater. I invited all my employees, and I said, I went to the businesses, and I said, hey, I need sponsors because we're raising money for charity, and we're going to write a check and we're going to give it to them at our movie. We're going to go watch Star Wars. That's exactly what we did. Is everybody had fun. We all watched a movie. Everybody goes to the movies anyway. All I had to do was ask a couple businesses for, hey, would you be willing to give $250 for this cause? And we raised thousands of dollars. And it really, there wasn't a lot of organization to it because you rented the whole theater. The theater got their money, and no one's spending $250 for a movie ticket, but they will because it's you, Gabe. It's your company and what you're doing, giving back to the community. Now it's something we can get behind. And small businesses, I think, can't they think it's going to cost them a lot of money to do that, or they need to have a lot. They don't need that. And so I'm just going to break that myth on this
Right.
podcast. And let's say in 2025 we're going to do a cool event this year.
Yeah.
If you and There's other ideas out there, but that one's the easiest because you don't have to show up and prepare a place, put money. All you have to do is show up. You show up.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, that one's an easy one. And businesses that have been around for a long time, don't give away from their ability to want to give back to the community. People want to do good things in the community. And sometimes, when you're struggling, and you're not struggling, but 5 years in, I was just thinking about when I was 5 years in, I wasn't doing any of that stuff yet. But I think I would have loved to have somebody coach in and say, yeah, man, it's a good thing for you is to give back to community that way. And who knows? Maybe throw it out to your own employees to think what give them some ideas. Maybe they come up with a good idea.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Hmm.
Well, man, we've had a really good conversation about a lot of different points for ones thinking about going to business, or how they take the risk, some of the expectations. Anything else comes to mind around this topic? I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about for sure.
Um, this is gonna come across kind of esoteric, but maybe it's helpful for some people. Um, I think business requires a lot of courage, um, and which I've thought a lot about over the last few years. And I think I've seen personally that one of the biggest builders of courage, for me at least, is having a life that is uh, that's beautiful, that's worth living, that's full. And so family fills up a lot of that. Obviously, like my church fills up a lot of that. But just things like I get together regularly with a group of guys, and we will feast together, we'll celebrate, we'll smoke cigars, we'll hang out around a fire, and just like small little touch points like that. I think. I think a lot of people don't take risks uh, because there's a lot of fear, and they don't have like a life behind them that is helping them work through that fear, right? That's giving them like beauty, that's like fueling the courage to, hey, let's conquer this thing. Um, so I've just found for me personally that yeah. Building beauty within my life, meaningful things within my life has really helped kind of fuel um, being willing to take risks.
Man, I love that. That is well put. Where it's not just you. You have an extended community beyond even your family.
Yeah,
I think that with all the mental health crises that you see in the country, that it becomes therapy, and your attitude does affect your business.
yeah,
Who doesn't want to work with a winner, or somebody that's, moving forward, so that's great advice, man. And I think that for ones that are thinking about this, there's a lot of learning out there. You can reach out. Gabe is just giving content like all the time. Look at his posts, follow him, and he's got a lot of wisdom there from ones that are ready to, maybe they're ready to take that leap. They're ready to get into the business. Well, it's pest control or something else. There's plenty of business out there,
Yeah,
you
right.
know. Yeah, and so sounds like you're going to be coaching people on how to take that risk. How do you do that? There's different ways to do it. The E-Myth is one of my favorite books. There's
Yeah.
another version out called the E-Myth Revisited
Yep.
that talk about that journey very specifically. That journey of going from a technician or somebody good at something. You're going to be good at something if you're working, and then how do you take that next step? Now, I will just say, being an entrepreneur or business owner is not for everybody.
Mm.
In fact, a lot of people do not think that way. It's okay. I don't, I don't think any less of somebody that doesn't have a desire to do that.
Right.
You can put your energy and life into plenty of other things to find fulfillment. You don't need to own a business.
Yeah.
A lot of times the myth is you're going to have more freedom. Sometimes that isn't the truth. At least the sacrifice that I heard Gabe talking about, I know I've been through it where there was not a lot of freedom.
Right.
And usually you're the guy that learns what sacrifice really is. It's like telling somebody that's never had children what kind of sacrifices they're going to make. Well, you probably won't know until you have your own kids,
Yeah.
but you can get a taste. You can pull some of those things together. Excellent. This is a great podcast. Thanks, Gabe, for being on, and I can't wait to push this out and have comments and things come back. So thank you for being on the SwarmCast today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap on this episode of SwarmCast. Thanks for tuning in and arming yourself with the marketing firepower to keep your pest control business thriving. Before you scurry off, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a review. It helps us spread like a well-placed bait station. Got a topic you want us to tackle? Drop us a line and let's keep the conversation buzzing. Until next time, stay sharp, stay strategic, and keep swarming the market.